Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. This morning we discussed the headlines, including two very disturbing incidents, one in a Georgia prison and the other in a Texas school classroom. Also this morning, Nikole Hannah-Jones and others unveiled the new Center for Journalism and Democracy at Howard University. We will discuss all of that this morning with Oshia Boyd. Good morning, Oshia.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's always good to see you. And I always know that she is ready to bring the hammer like Thor.
Well, thank you.
No, because you don't fool around. You like ready. You're like, listen, this is the deal, and that's that. This is how we gonna give it to you, nice and raw,
Rough.
the way it is.
You don't have to get ready if you stay ready.
There you go. I like that. So, Oshia, we start this morning. The Camden County Sheriff's Office in Georgia is conducting an internal investigation. We all know about these internal investigations. After the video
Yeah.
was released, I think Sean King first released this video on his platform. It showed a man being beaten by corrections officers, a black man to be specific, in the Camden County Jail. According to the investigators, the investigation will include all recorded video from the time the inmate entered the facility on September 3rd, 2022, until his release September 30th, 2022. It involved 41-year-old Jared Hobbs from Greensboro, North Carolina. He had been arrested for speeding, driving with a suspended or revoked license, and possession of a controlled substance on September 3rd. But regardless of the reason for arresting this man, this video is just
Oh,
disgusting.
yeah. I didn't see this part of the video.
Well, this
I just
is
saw the beginning.
apparently some other, incidents, but this is just, they are no, it's the same one, I guess. But this is absolutely ridiculous.
I,
This doesn't stop.
I mean, it's like there are no words. We've used all the words to describe this. Earlier, we were talking about it's disgusting. It's heartbreaking. It's it's anger inducing. I mean, how can you not look at that and be livid? How can you
Yeah.
not look at that and think that's okay to do to one person? There's no reason for anyone to what we used to call it when I was growing up, jump that man. That man was
Right,
jumped,
right.
and he was jumped by a gang of police officers or sheriff officers. Look at him. I mean, I read
Yeah,
that one of them hit the wall accidentally, trying to punch him, and his arm is now in a cast.
yeah. It's
They
out of
flew this man
control. It's coward behavior. Um,
cowardly.
Cowardly, yes. And look how they're throwing him. And but you read something, or you heard something about this incident that I thought was really interesting, and as far as how the victim here thought about George Floyd.
Yes, he said that the only thing he could think about was not falling to the ground. Is just remaining standing because that's how George Floyd died when he got onto the ground. And I
Go
just
ahead.
thought, wow, the ability that we have to think as this is as trauma is happening to us, he was still able to process what can I do to survive. He was thinking about his survival, and that's where it's like exceptionally heartbreaking for me, is because this man was worried about, I'm going to die. I'm going to
Hmm.
die, and what can I do to keep myself alive? How many times have our people, have black men in particular, been in these situations where it is definitely, I'm thinking I'm going to die. We had here in Indianapolis what last year, uh someone, and this man was also on suicide watch, or he was having a breakdown, and he wanted to be protected. That was not protecting him. And I'm thinking about when we had this man in Indianapolis who was a pianist whose parents called him because he was having a psychological moment, um, mental illness moment, and he ended up getting killed. We just came up on his 1 year anniversary not too long ago, and
Mm.
everyone describes him as a gentle giant. He was a pianist, um, a composer. He Herman Whitfield was his name, and he was by everyone's description super talented, uber
Mhm.
talented. Had pieces that were, played all over the world. And this is what happens to black men. They ask for help. Even black women too. We ask for help, and death is always around the corner.
Mm. That is, oh, very succinct way of putting it. Wow. And you mentioned the George Floyd, him thinking he didn't want to go on the ground. This is something again we talk about, and there's a report that just came out about um, the lack of training of police officers. You remember after George
Hmm.
Floyd's murder, there was this uproar that at the very least some training needed to take place,
Hmm.
um, and the report shows that virtually no department has changed its training practices or improved its training practices since the death of George Floyd. And in this case, the young man Daniels, uh, this young man, they ripped one of his dreadlocks out of his head during the incident, which that
Mm,
also in a lot of ways signifies that this was more uh, the anger from these officers was due in part, if not large part, if not entirely, because he was black.
yeah, yeah. They were probably pulling him by his hair because it was there and it was easy to grab. Um, I just think about, and he looked like he had thick locks. That was
Hmm.
not a small. I mean, one piece of one strand of hair hurts. When you pulling
Right.
out a patch from the scalp, I just can't even imagine. Um, it's just really heartbreaking. You talk about the training hasn't changed. No, they're doing what they were trained to do, and that's the sad part of it all. And what's even sadder is that we are paying these people, and I keep going back to that point whenever I can, because I think that black people need to recognize we are paying for this with our tax dollars.
Hmm.
And we have to start saying, no, we demand, not we're begging, not we're pleading, not can you, but we have to demand more. We have to demand that we have a seat at these tables. The presidents of the FOP, they're usually the ones coming out and defending these people. We got to get on these police boards and start making changes. We can't have people on the board who just co-sign with whatever else. We have to actually, and I know it's hard for us because we're like we don't want to be a part of the police. But how else? It's that catch 22. But how else do you make that change happen? Because we have to be in those rooms
Yeah.
to give these
Attorneys for the
experiences.
Attorneys for the young man said that, a quote, "This video is undeniable and the deputy's actions are inexcusable. Mr. Hobbs entered the Camden County Jail suffering a psychological episode and asking to be placed in protective confinement. But instead of protecting him, these deputies jumped him and beat him and kicked him mercilessly like a gang of dangerous thugs." And that's exactly what that video presents, a gang of dangerous thugs. There's no way better to describe that than the young man's attorney described it. Um, this this continues to happen despite despite the George Floyd situation. I mean, you can go on and on. Michael Brown, Tamir. I mean, you just go on and on. Despite all those situations, even the ones that didn't have the video, but that we know of, Sandra Bland. You just keep going on. Oshia, this is it's not stopping.
No,
What
it's not.
will it take to stop this?
The end of white supremacy. I mean, what when you think about it, that's what it boils down to is that this idea that, as you said, they were thugs, and the lawyer said these were thugs. That's not the picture painted. The picture painted is that that black man is a thug, that he's the thug, that he did something wrong just because he exists and he deserves that treatment. That we're called the thugs, we're called the gang members if you see three or more young black men together.
Mhm.
That behavior, you have Kyle Rittenhouse who's running around killing people and going to a whole nother place, whole nother city, and that's defended. But this black man can't defend himself. And then they added a bunch of charges to
Mhm.
him. We can't defend ourselves because we're seen as a thug. It's the propaganda, which I know that's a word that was used yesterday at the center. The propaganda against black people it's baked in the cake of America. So our
Mm.
actions are always viewed as a negative.
Yeah, yeah. And this incident, there were some reports that it happened. It started over the fact that this young man refused a sandwich or something of that nature. Don't know exactly what triggered it, but that there are some reports that he refused a sandwich and allegedly tossed it on the floor. If that's
Oh
the
yeah,
case,
that's grounds for getting beat down. Yeah.
yeah, it's just
That's grounds for getting the beat
right,
down. I think
right.
you can say you don't want to have a sandwich and you can throw it on the ground. I mean you don't do that. You don't do that. That's the behavior, the reaction did not match the behavior
No,
at all.
no, and we talk about thugs, a gang of thugs. You know that. Well, if particularly if they're unarmed, if there's just one in there, that's not happening. But you see, the whole
Yeah,
gang came in. The whole gang.
yeah,
They wanted to get a piece of this man, and
yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
horrible.
that is exactly what they wanted to do, is get a piece. And then he didn't have pants on
Hmm.
as well. So I feel like he was in a vulnerable state, you know, um, and they also took advantage of that. There's something to be said when I don't know, there's something that struck me about him not having pants, that he wasn't fully clothed. Um,
Hmm.
he was vulnerable to the attack, and they knew this.
Hmm. Yeah, as we said at the top, very cowardly act. We'll see what happens. Generally, despite the convictions of the officers in the Floyd case, and some others, they they s- we just don't know what the outcome will be from case to case when it comes to these videotaped incidents
Mhm,
of wrongdoing. Somehow they get to America's criminal justice courtrooms and they make it right somehow.
mhm,
And another
mhm,
thing that can't be made right this morning, Oshia is a middle school teacher in Texas, is no longer employed after a video posted on social media showed him telling students his race is superior. Deep down in my heart, I'm ethnocentric, which means I think my race is the superior one, is the quote from this teacher that you see here on the screen. Um, it was at Bowles Middle School, a sixth through eighth grade school in Pflugerville, Pflugerville, about 18 miles northeast of Austin. And the teacher says that he thinks everybody thinks their race is superior.
Deep
They're just
down in
not
my
honest
heart,
about it.
I'm ethnocentric, which means I think my race is the superior one.
Oh,
Wait, no, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me
so
finish.
white is better than all.
No, let me finish. Let me
Go
finish.
ahead.
I think everybody thinks that. They're just not honest about
Hey,
it.
I'm not racist though. I like all types of kinds.
Did I say I don't like people?
People only
You
think
just
that.
Wait, so you said you are what? You are
You
racist?
saying you're like
You're
I think
racist?
everybody's a racist at that level.
No, you said you are racist. Correct?
I did. I did. Yeah, I'm
Say
trying to
it.
be
Yes,
honest.
I'm racist.
No, I'm not saying it again. I've said it enough.
So you're
I
racist.
think I slightly told you to stop speaking.
Yes, you
Did
said
it.
Put your phone up.
I respect
I'm
you.
putting
I
your
actually
phone up.
respected you for a while, but like
I'm putting your
now
phone up.
I don't even got no more respect for you.
Put it up.
Yeah, for real. I don't think I got respect for him no more, bro.
You know, you should have more respect. 'Cause
In Pflugerville, Texas, a middle school teacher was caught on video
Wow.
mhm.
Eh,
I'm like those
and
kids. You have to laugh at his idiocy. He's an idiot.
well, and those kids, they handled it so well, and then just the thought, they gave it thought, right? And after because they had to, and they made sure to repeat the question. They made sure to have him say it more than once that he was a racist. And The young man said, then I used to
I
respect you.
lost
I have no
respect
more
for it.
respect for you. And the other one said the same thing. He lost his
Those
job.
kids, those kids were brilliant because you
Hmm.
can tell when he said it, the light bulb went on, and that's why they started laughing. Like, "Oh, you just admitted to this? Are
Hmm.
you serious?" And then they were say it again. Wait a minute, say it
Right.
one more time. And he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, I'm not gonna say it again," because he's that's when he realized, like, okay, they're now they're gonna check me on it. Yeah, and
Yep.
then when the boy said I lost respect, and the other boy said, "Yeah, I used to respect him too."
Didn't you hear him
Idiot,
say at the
idiot.
end there, okay, turn the camera off.
Yeah.
Because you talking about the light bulb going off. All of a sudden, this man realized, uh-oh, I think I done messed up. But
Big time.
it, and the shame of it is this. I mean, it could have been a really good conversation. It could have been a conversation about, sounds like it started off as a conversation as to why people think that their race might be superior, right? And
Mm.
he took it there. You know, he said,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
sounded like there was a lesson they were talking about in
mhm,
class, and then he said, "Well, by the way,
yeah,
I'm ethnocentric."
right, right. And it obviously caught these children by surprise because as we just said, like I used to have respect for you, now I don't, because they were like, really, are you saying you're racist? And my man said, yeah. But that
He did.
that's it. But that's, it also shows you how emboldened folks are. And then these positions, right? We just a moment ago we talked about the sheriff deputies. Now we're talking about teachers, people in these positions. No matter what, a police officer, sheriff deputy, however you want to call it, um, a teacher, they have to be held even more accountable than the everyday person, than the construction worker, than the person who cleans tables or whatever. They have to be
Mhm,
held more accountable because
mhm.
they are in a position of influence. They are in a position of power. Yeah, teachers, I'm on the front of that bandwagon that teachers are underpaid and overworked. This had nothing, that incident in Texas, what we just watched, had nothing to do with either.
Mm-mm. No, I think when we talk about racism, there's always someone who comes and says racism doesn't exist in America. Yes, it does, and this is why. Because even though you have legislation that has been passed, you can't change someone's heart, and you can't change their beliefs. And so what we have, he's just one of many teachers around this country who feel the way he feels, and they have access to our children. Um, and they're in an institution. The institution is called public schools. And although he said the quiet part out loud, which in many ways I'm glad he did, because now
Mhm.
we know who this man is and he's gone. But
Right,
there are so many who have these implicit biases, and it comes out in so many different ways with the way our children are treated. And I know there's people saying that's why I homeschool my children. That's why that's not always available to everyone.
right.
Um, and our tax dollars go to these schools, so we have a right to be in these schools. What isn't a right is to mistreat people, and it's to use racism as you're teaching these students, but no one wants to admit that that's there because people don't want to admit that they have implicit bias. People don't want to admit that they're racist. This man did. He did. And I mean, it backfired, but hey, I'm sure he can
Mhm.
go to a school that they have some conservative Republicans have some schools somewhere that they'll welcome this man. I'm pretty sure he's going to be okay.
Well, Bobby Henry writes in that people need to be held accountable no matter what position they are in. I think when we give a
Mhm.
certain amount of respect to a position, we could be subjecting those who are not in position an escape route to be as racist as they want to be. And I hear you, Bobby. I just think that police officers, I think teachers, I think yeah, you have to hold everybody accountable. I totally agree with that. But I think some you have to have they have to have even more accountability. It's like parents and children. The children is not as accountable as the parent in certain in a lot of situations. The
Mhm.
parent it has to be. And it's like police officers. It's one of my pet peeves when there's a non-emergency and I see a cop just right through the red light or through the stop
Oh, mine
sign.
too.
It's such a you're
Mine
supposed to
too.
be setting the example. And you're not above the law just because you put the badge on. You have certain privileges, but none of those privileges invites you or should invite you to break the law. If you're going to ticket me for running the red light, then somebody should ticket you for running the red light. That's
I agree.
yeah. It's just there's no excuse. Teachers, you're in a position where you have the power to influence young people, these vulnerable young people. And if you're going to do, your responsibility rises above that of the student. And so
Hmm.
the idea that they should be looked at like anybody else, not in a lot of cases, yes, but not in certain circumstances. And certainly this is one of them. He should never be able to teach again, ever.
I think people are held to a higher standard um when you hold people's lives in your hands. I
Right.
definitely think, and I don't, like you mentioned, the construction worker. The construction worker, I don't have any kind of way to hold that person accountable unless it's one on one.
Hmm.
Now, if we have a conversation and it comes out that he said something racist, then yes, I hold you accountable. But also, your racism doesn't have a direct effect on me
Hmm.
as the racism of a teacher or a police officer does. And also, again, the line though for me is tax dollars, public tax dollars. That's how you can hold that construction person accountable by not hiring their company. But
Right.
we don't have the same kind of power when it comes to, because our tax dollars go into state, local fund, and then they're dispersed. So we don't have that kind of power, but um, we can make demands on how that is used. So I think a difference. There's a difference for me, and I think we have to start owning and realizing, if you pay taxes in your state, in your city, you have some power and you have a right to make some demands. Too long we've not done that.
Yeah. Oshia, whew, we better we better take on this next topic. The Center for Journalism and Democracy, a first of its kind academic center committed to strengthening historically informed pro-democracy journalism, has opened at Howard University. Nikole Hannah-Jones founded it. She says, more than a year ago, I came to Howard University with a vision to create a space for veteran and budding journalists to hone their craft and respond to our increasingly threatened democracy. So on Tuesday, they officially launched the Center for Journalism and Democracy. Um, it's a big move, especially at a HBCU, Howard
Yeah.
University. Oshia, your thoughts on this?
Well, we're trying to end it on a light note. So I think it is a great move. I am very happy to see it. As I listened to part of the summit yesterday, I kept thinking about what we as journalists have done to drop the ball, so to speak, when it comes to democracy.
Oh,
And yeah, this is where it gets heavy. I'm sorry, Stacey.
that's okay,
I
because I'm with you.
I just kept thinking, as they were talking, as different panelists were talking, I kept thinking, I often blame TV, and I often blame national reporters, but even the local, we didn't realize how much democracy. Like, you have to always be concerned about democracy, and that's why I think the lesson I'm getting now from like what's happening now is you can't just assume that democracy is okay because we made gains in 1965, or you
Yeah.
have to always be vigilant about. And I think that's where, as journalists, we may have dropped the ball. Obviously, this whole unbiased, getting two sides and all that stuff, but I think we have to stay vigilant to protect democracy. Not
Yeah,
Democrats, but democracy.
democracy, right? And so the summit showcases Nicole Hannah Jones said it showcases the philosophy, or she says our philosophy, that democracy not only guarantees a free press, it requires one. And it's interesting that this took place yesterday because and it took place at pretty much the same time that Donald Trump was announcing
Oh,
that he was going to run for the 2024 run for the White House in 2024. And and you make the connection because the fact that if there was one president who really attacked a free press, who really went out of his way, in fact, look, and now don't hate me for saying this, but he created in a lot of ways, he created April Ryan. So, but when I say he created April Ryan, I mean she was a great reporter before him, but nobody knew April Ryan. Is what I'm trying to say
mhm,
until that
mhm,
incident in the White
mhm,
House, and and
mhm,
and and April was able to catapult that into people knowing that look, I'm
mhm,
here. I've been a White House correspondent for whatever long,
mhm,
and I'm here and y'all got to deal with it. But Trump attacked the April Ryans. He attacked uh, journalists left and right. In fact, he famously revoked the press credentials of a CNN reporter, a couple of CNN reporters, if I remember correctly. Um, he made it a point to go all out. He tried to and he's high, he's got the Supreme Court, and his goal was to strip the free press, freedom of the
mhm,
press.
mhm,
And
mhm.
and that remains his stated goal, one of his stated goals. He has many, but that remains one of them. And so
It.
so we see that in a lot, Oshia, in a great ball that happened during his presidency, that
Mhm.
free press was in danger.
It is amazing how many Americans are okay with that as well. Um, it, we've there's always been this idea about, oh, you can't trust the media, and we aren't like, lawyers and journalists are like together with, but this disdain has just gone to the nth degree under thanks to Donald Trump and his rhetoric. And I think many people don't understand how important the free press is. It's not about me as a journalist, it's about what we do as journalists that protects you as an American, as a democracy. And I think I'm very, very passionate about journalism. And it's not because I think I'm so important, but it's just that what we do is so freaking important. And I always tell all of my interns and young people, like, we're in the Constitution. The founding fathers, everything that they did, I don't agree with. But, three-fifths a person thing, I definitely don't agree with that. But they understood a free press was important. And they
Mhm.
understood that based on their previous experience. A free press is vital to a democracy because you have to have checks and balances. You have to have someone holding you accountable. And like I said, as I listened to the speakers, I thought, man, we need to step our game up. We have not done all that we should have been doing. And maybe in some ways we have to thank Trump for that. I don't want to give the man any credit, but maybe we should say, okay, you've made us realize we were not on our game the way we should have been in the 80s, 90s. And I think about the black press. I think I grew up listening to the Rowan Report with Carl Rowan. That
Mm.
came on
Yeah.
black radio
Yep.
well, I don't know if it was every single morning, but I remember I couldn't wait for that man to come on. Where
Hmm.
where are these things at that used to be there for our community? That helped
Yeah.
us be serious about politics and democracy.
Yeah. For me, it was Gil Noble, like it is in New York. It was
Mm,
on the local ABC station, like it is, and that was on, and you paid attention. It was this, he just gave it to you the way it was, as the title of his program was. I remember that so well in the 70s and 80s. Um, but the thing about it is, things have not gotten much better at all. Thus, this democracy summit last night, and this new program Nikole Hannah-Jones has founded at Howard. Um, we see even more so, like Fox News, for instance. Come on, I think it's high time that they take that news label off and just say Fox, because
Mhm.
some of them are
Mhm.
crazy like a fox. Um, but they're not. They don't hide in any way, shape, or form
No.
that they are a partisan, basically a partisan ad machine.
Mhm.
They are conservative, they are Republican, and they continue to push and to tell you who to vote for and stuff like that. They are 100% that way, and there's really no difference now. CNN has moved that way to more to the right, and that's been a mission of their new leadership over the past
Mhm.
year or so,
Mhm.
moving that way because of what? Because Fox is the one that makes all the money. So they're going to try and follow
Mhm.
that blueprint. Remember cable news? CNN was the king for a long time. People wanted to figure it out. MSNBC tried to figure out CNN's success. They tried to, piggyback off that. And of course, they are the ones that never really was able to get over the hump, as it were.
Mhm.
But and then look what they're doing. Just before the
Mhm.
election, what they did was horrendous. Tiffany Cross, that situation was horrendous. It was
Mhm.
it had to have been politically motivated. They wanted to get her
Mhm.
voice off the air ahead of the election. So these networks for sure. And then when you look at the newspapers, the Wall Street Journal used to be very, very one of those papers like the New York Times. They had to they had to present the news and the news only, and
Mhm.
not a point of
Mhm.
view. They
Mhm.
they certainly Wall Street is that's a Rupert Murdoch paper,
Yeah.
right?
I'm gonna say it's the
Um,
Murdoch paper. Yeah.
so there you go. The Times, the Post, they the way they lean, and a good journalist. And I learned this when I first came into the business, um, even before I came into the business. And I'm not political myself at all, but a good journalist, you never know whether he is Republican, Democrat, or independent. You never
Yeah.
supposed to know. And there was a couple of guys, Rick Orloff and Patrick McGreevy, the Los Angeles Daily News, covered City Hall for the Los Angeles Daily News in the early '90s, and those two guys really they were fantastic political reporters. You didn't know for sure, who they were for. And that is
Yes.
supposed to be the way it is, right? You're supposed to be that way. We're not, as journalists, Oshia, we are supposed to be as straight down the middle as possible.
Yes, as a reporter. Now, I will say, I am a columnist now, so I do give my opinion. But I
You
still don't
columnist
say,
now. See, that's different.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've been writing a column for a long time now, but I never so people can guess where they think I land based on my viewpoints. But
Hmm.
I've never said explicitly one thing or another because I don't believe in that either. I believe in being a free thinker and voting for the best candidate for whatever position it is. But as you were talking, I kept thinking about, okay, the general public, like we know as journalists, Rupert Murdoch owns Wall Street Journal and he owns Fox News, and what's behind that. The general public has none of this information the way we do, and and the general public also has the lines have been blurred between commentary and news. So many of these news shows now, the news is presented and then we talk about it with talking heads, and so now and we're getting their opinion. So now it's blurred between just straight news and opinion. Um,
Hmm.
and this is going on all day long.
Right.
So I think again, this goes back to the protecting democracy. We've done a lot to damage that and to damage our own credibility because so many times it's not we don't like my opinion column has opinion. It's labeled opinion.
Opinion.
Um,
Yes.
but when you're talking about it, there's no opinion label. There's no crawling across the screen saying this is opinion. There's none of that happening. So people are taking people's opinion as fact
Hmm.
so many times. And it's just become like I said, we have to do more media education, I think, as well.
Hmm.
We have to help the public understand why journalism is important. Again, not us, but why journalism, why a free press, why the free press is important. Because
Hmm.
long after I'm gone, I still want a free press to be around. Because again, it's not about me, it's about what we do that supports democracy. And that at the end of the day is the most important. We've seen this rise of authoritarianism, and we weren't doing a good job of pushing back and calling it what it is. We let people say, "Oh, it was Antifa," when we know it wasn't Antifa at January. We know
Right,
this,
right,
but we
right.
didn't push back well enough to say, "No, quit." Why are you saying that? We have to stop the whole we can't. We have to be impartial and get both sides. When you know someone's lying, let's call it out.
Well, that's the part I like too. You're absolutely right. That whole idea of holding, you cannot hold a story because a person refuses to talk to you.
Hmm.
If you have the information, if it's concrete, you got to run with it,
Hmm.
regardless of who is upset,
Hmm.
regardless of who is not talking. That's the thing that, and you're right. Politicians, many politicians, especially, and others too, but politicians particularly, have hid behind this. Okay, we're not going to be available for comment. We're not going.
Hmm.
The story will go away, and we've seen that happen. We've
Hmm.
definitely seen it happen. And that's just not the way you want to do business as a journalist. If you got the story, your responsibility is to give that other side an opportunity to state his side, to either deny, confirm, and say his piece. He refuses to. You've made every honest effort to reach him. Then you put that in the story.
You
We
put that in the
attempted
story.
to reach such and such at such and such time, several times, or whatever. So they can't gripe at that. I mean, they
Well,
can gripe
now
all they want, but they don't.
they're just
Go
so
ahead.
arrogant now with their not wanting to give a comment too. They're just
Mhm.
very arrogant. As it used to be that was frowned upon and made you look bad to not give a
Right.
comment. Now it's like, yeah, we're not going to give a comment to the leftist media, to the liberal media. It's very, and
Mhm.
then people are rallying around there and supporting. They're like, yeah, they didn't want to talk to you because you're leftist. What? Like, where did that come from? They're just very, very proud now to not have a comment. It's like a badge of honor.
Right. Right. It's true. And again, like we certainly hold a lot of responsibility there for how things have now turned out, and now we're having this democracy summit last night at Howard. Um, free press, talking about how important the free press is and how it's required. It is required, but we have to do to your point. I guess we have to do a better job
Yeah,
overall.
yeah.
We saw CNN fire Chris Cuomo, right?
Hmm.
But they put him in that they're the ones who greenlit his interactions with his brother. They greenlit the fact that every other week or every week or maybe even more than just once a week during the pandemic, that Andrew was on with Chris
I
and no
mean,
other media. We were told just prior to that Andrew Cuomo wanted to come on the Black Press and talk about the pandemic. Next thing we knew, we saw Andrew Cuomo on with his brother. Now I don't hate on that, because if my brother was the governor, I should have some look, family privilege. Look, I don't care what y'all say. I should have the access. If he don't give me that access, me and him got a problem, right? I'm a journalist, you the governor, and you got some news to break. You breaking it with me. Come on.
right, right.
You
You better
breaking it with
not break
me.
that news someplace else.
Right. You go to my competition? No.
Yeah,
No.
it's gonna be a fight at Mama's house.
Right. Now, this idea of him advising his brother during a crisis in his brother's life is also absurd on its face. I'm not saying Andrew Cuomo didn't do anything wrong or Chris Cuomo didn't. What he didn't do wrong was his brother was in trouble, and he went and he said he was very transparent with CNN. And guess what? I believe him. I believe, and
I believe him
Chris was
too.
very transparent.
And
And
CNN said, okay.
yeah, and they felt a little heat. Somebody from some side turned up the heat a little bit, and then they cut the cord. That was horrible. That was awful. But maybe that's a little off track now, right?
Well, they threw that man to the bus. But no, I know what you're saying. They greenlit that, but that's what corporate America does, though, right?
Mhm.
Corporate America co-signs you and they use you up until they can. Then when the heat comes, they're like, "Oh, we're done with you," making
We're
our
done.
stock prices fall. So I mean, he that's why you can't just anyway. Yeah, he should have saw that one coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, free press is so important. The black press, still 195 years of the black press of America. It's amazing when you think about it. 195 years that we have the black press, because we talked about on this show this morning. We saw on this show this morning what happened in that Georgia prison. We saw
Mhm.
on this show this morning what happened in that Texas classroom. Those are just very it's unfortunate to say, but very small examples of what's been going on
Mhm.
in this country.
Mhm.
All the, let me say it this way, just to underscore it, what we saw at that prison on tape this morning, far worse continues to happen. It's probably happening as we speak. Far
Mhm.
worse.
Mhm.
And the fact that we are still here despite the attacks on rights, particularly the rights of African Americans, we are still telling this story. So it's not. I think about those who lead the black press. It can't be an easy job,
No.
not in today's America. It
No, and
cannot
there's
be easy.
so
At least
much.
back, yeah, at least back. You think about the civil rights movement. I think about this too, Oshie. And I know we way over time. I know Greer's going to fire us, but um, but the thing about it, I think about this often. Back in the civil rights movement, we, the black press, had private meetings with Martin Luther King and folks like that. They would call the black press in to discuss things, discuss strategy and other stuff. And we don't have that time. Many of the so-called leaders today in communities of color, you see them where they at? They CNN, Fox, MSNBC. They don't go to the black press. They don't call
Mm-mm.
in the black press,
Mm-mm.
and it
Mm-mm.
probably shows you why King and his folks back then were able to get things done. They knew where to go,
Mm. Okay,
right?
Stacey, you done said a word right there.
Look,
You didn't
the
just start
proof,
preaching, did you?
the proof. The proof. We keep talking about these a record number of black candidates ran or whatever, right? And those who took time, we sat here with Maxwell Frost on this program. He won. Val
Mm,
Demings, we reached out to Val Demings probably no less than 20, 25 times over the past year. She did not come. She lost.
mm,
She ain't the only one. There's so many,
mm.
so many. That continues to happen. Yeah, it's something to be said still after 195 years of the power of the black press. Beasley was another one. Where was Beasley? So,
Well, I hope they're listening.
well, that's the
Or
problem.
their people
That's the
are
problem.
listening. Um,
That's the
eh,
problem.
yeah, they
That's the
don't
problem.
understand the reach. They don't understand the reach. And they don't understand.
We are talking to people they need to talk to.
Yeah.
Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters will return your phone call. She old school, but she knows the deal. She
Yeah.
knows the deal, right? You got these younger ones. Heck, we even had my girl on. I'm a big fan. Like I said, I always say I'm not, and I'm not. I don't get involved in all that stuff. I just report on politics, but I do love myself some AOC. We had her on.
Mm-hmm.
She
Mm-hmm.
understand the assignment. She understood the
Mm-hmm.
assignment.
And I would think that anybody would just want to spread their message, period. Why
Right.
are you in the habit of turning? Just you need to get out there and let who if black press only reach one person, that's one person that you need to try to reach.
It's like going into the
That's just
barber
I
shop.
just say, yeah.
It's like going into the barber shop, Oshia. And you know how that is. I mean, everybody watched Eddie Murphy's Coming to America and the whole barber shop. It's like
Mm-hmm.
going into the barber shop. You go into a black barber shop, it's like going to a newspaper. Because
Mm-hmm.
whatever's said in that barber shop, if it's of any value, it's going to spread through the community like wildfire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is the way it is. It has been proven, as Greer writes, we've made a difference. It's been proven time
Mm-hmm.
and again. Look, oftentimes when you look back, revisionist history or historians will look back. They look at Jim Clyburn's endorsement of Joe Biden when he was running, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they say that was the turning point. I beg to differ.
Uh-oh.
The
Take
turning
us to
point
church.
was when Dr. Benjamin Chavis and a bunch of publishers of the black press went down to, and I was with them. There's a picture, a famous picture. I'm in the picture with Joe Biden. Went down to Charleston, met the candidate Joe Biden at a hotel there, sat down, live streamed it and everything. Sat down around a round table. So many of certainly the leadership of the NMPA was there. I think Bobby Henry was there as well. Karen Carter Richards, you name Janice Ware, Dr. Chape. We all were there. We sat, had a long interview with Joe Biden. He was about to have to, his campaign was on the verge of suspension. Bernie Sanders had the race in his hands. This was in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us that interview. And later on that day, I believe it was, or the next day, Clyburn endorsed him. He won the South Carolina primary and he never looked back. It all began with the black press. Now we're waiting for Joe Biden, the president of the United States of America, who acknowledges that black folks is the one who got him in office. We're waiting, President Biden, for you to return to the scene of not the crime, but where it all began. We're waiting.
Well, don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath.
and just to go along, CNN, and you see them running the CNN or whatever, they can't tell black people anything. And I credit Greer because she's right. Black people don't watch CNN. They don't. They don't cancel Don Lemon. So
Yeah.
what's left? Chris is gone.
Yeah.
Chris is about the closest thing
Rachel.
they have identified
Yeah.
now to a black person, and he's Italian.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it's a shame that we continue to have to plead our own cause. It's time, we got to keep pleading our own cause, yes. But by now, we've earned the fact that others should also be pleading our cause. And I'm talking about others in
Yeah.
power. I'm talking about, I always have to drop his name too, because he's one of the big ones out there, the Jay-Z's of the world. The Byron Allens, Byron Allen has a griot, so he's not going to really big up the black press, right? But you know what I'm saying? Those out
Yeah.
there that have positions, because many of them, just about all of them, would not be where they are without the black press. It's fair to say that before they became who they became, just about all of them was at the black. People have heard me say this before, and it's so true. They started with the black press. They started out by talking to us. We've launched so many phenomenal careers, and it's not until they're in handcuffs or being sued by the Me Too movement or somebody else that they come back to the black press.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a
As
shame.
you're talking, I'm thinking about. I mean, so many do owe their careers. I think we have to get serious though. We can't look to celebrities all the time. But as you were talking, I was thinking about how many celebrities, like When I was growing up, I read my Right On magazine. I read, all these magazines
Yeah, you
that
had it on the
you
table, right?
couldn't, man, those you couldn't, like, those were our people that you wouldn't find in Tiger Beat. And
I
I
mean, I
read
wasn't
Black Beat
getting
Right
Jet
On.
just for the beauty of the week. Yes, I was.
But there are so many black celebrities. TMI, Stacey. But there were so many celebrities that were not mainstream that you would never see getting publicity until they got to a certain level that the black
Yep.
press was already focused on. There's so many issues in our community that were not being spoken about. Ebony Jet always had great stories, great things to worry
Always.
about. I remember I learned way back when I was, I want to say in seventh, eighth grade, maybe sixth grade, about a chemical that was in certain hair care products that you should not use. And I read that in the Black magazine. I read that if this, and I started telling my mom, look, if this has this product in it, chemical in it, we don't need this. And I found, it's that kind of information
But
that
wait.
we
So
don't
hold that thought,
respect that
because
we had.
yeah, but guess what? Last week I wrote a story. Ben Crump is suing who? L'Oreal, right? I
Hmm.
think it's L'Oreal with the the black hair product, whoever it was. Well, maybe it's not L'Oreal, it's somebody with the black hair products that cause the chemicals that they're with the hair causing cancer in black women. It's just amazing you said that, because you read that back where Ebony Jet
In the 80s. I read that in
in
the
the
80s.
80s. And so, as Greer points out again, that they were, by the time news got to, it was old news by the time it
Yeah.
got to
Yeah.
mainstream media.
It's
We had
been
already
proven
had it.
that news breaks in our community, that mainstream press follows our lead, that they see what we're talking about in those places where you have a publication. They see what we're talking about, and then they follow. I mean, that's not anything that's not new.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
but the again, outside of us, we're in the, people don't know this stuff. Outside of us, people don't know this stuff. Again, the regular person does not know anything about journalism other than what he or she sees on TV. We're not all
Hmm.
sitting around smoking cigarettes, drinking, waiting on the next big story. That's
Right.
that's the vision, that we're just waiting on the next big story. We're just doing nothing. We have a whole year, 2 years to work on this one story. That's not reality. But that is the vision that people have, because that is what's been portrayed over and over and over. You
Yeah.
know, um, as we're talking, I just keep thinking people just have no clue what journalism is and what we as
Right.
journalists do.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm going to quote the great Greer. She says, "Black
Right.
journalists are like gold to mainstream. They would never know what we think." And again, to your point and to what Greer just wrote, um, if you recall, back in the 60s during the civil rights movement, what happened? The mainstream press raided the black press for talent,
Yeah.
because those black reporters knew exactly what was going on. And as I
Yeah.
stated earlier, they had the inside meetings, the jailhouse meetings, and the church house meetings with King and
Yeah.
his folks. They knew what was going on. They knew the landscape.
Yeah.
And
That was
so
the first
um
push for diversity.
yeah, well, exactly, exactly, warning to those who are still going to mainstream: if you're leaving the black press, they eat their own.
Well,
They-
shots fired, Stacy. Shots fired.
little shot there, huh? Well, no. Pun intended, pun intended. But anyway, thank you so much as always, Oshia Boyd. No one brings the insight like Oshia. We really appreciate you so much. And thank
Thank
you
you.
all for joining. Let it be known. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.